Step 1 is done, but I actually have really good news. Beecham has selected the spa as one of their vendors to provide their motivational gifts, and we're going to be providing the package as described. The only thing that's changed is they've decided they need 15 instead of 10. I'm sure we're not going to be upset about that. And they didn't want delivery immediately, they actually wanted to put it off a little bit. So let's go ahead and convert this quote over to a sales order. In order to do this time I'm going to go to the Tasks menu, just for a little change of pace. I can come to the first option, which is Quotes and Sales Orders, and then I can of course choose whether I want to work with a quote or a sales order. I'm going to choose Quotes. This opens up the screen we were just looking at, and I'm going to use the previous button to find our quote. Now the question becomes, what do we do with this? Well, it's a little strange that you're actually going to open a quote in order to create a sales order, but that's because we're going to convert it. So what I'm going to do is actually change the date. Instead of April 8th, which is when they initially requested it, I'm now going to put in a different date. Let's say that they actually made their final decision on April 30th. I change the date, and then I come down and I can look at the quantity for the facials, remembering that they don't want 10 anymore, they want 15. Because this is still the quote, I can go ahead and change it. And then if I want to be on top of things, I also want to make sure that I move down and I change my discount. My discount wasn't necessarily calculated before. It was simply something that I typed in. So now, instead of a negative $105, it should be a negative $157.50. Once all of this is complete, I'm going to move up to my toolbar, and the button I'm looking for is the button that says Convert. You're about to save a transaction that's not in the current period. Yes, we know. You can see why Peachtree does a really good job about keeping us on top of our accounting principles. It tells us nicely that once the quote is converted to a sale or an invoice or a sales order, it's no longer going to be available. In other words, once the quote is converted, it goes away. If you keep a quote and it's never converted to anything, then you could of course come back and look at it historically using this screen. The question is, do we want to convert it to a sale and an invoice and print now, or a sales order? Because they're making the commitment to buy, but they don't actually want them delivered for another 2 or 3 months, we're going to convert it to a sales order. We'll simply say OK, and we have to create a sales order number. So we'll enter that now. And then we'll say OK again. Perfect. Now we've gone ahead and done the conversion, and you'll see that our quotes window is actually blank. Just to show how we work through the process, I'm going to close this window, go back to Tasks, or I could use the buttons again on our center, go to Quotes and Sales Orders, and this time I'll choose Sales Orders. It opens up to a blank, so I'll move to the previous. And we are happy to see that this is where our Beecham order actually exists. So what are we going to do now? Well, we see that we have a date of April 30th and it says ship by. Well, let's go ahead and modify that because they don't want it for a couple more months. They want it the end of July. We can see that it was converted from quote number 101, and that's locked in. So that does allow us to keep track of where it came from, even though that quote no longer exists. You also see an option where you can simply close this order without fulfilling it. That again, though, is not necessarily what we want to do. Now we're going to save this and close it. And let's take it to the next step. Now it's time to go ahead and create the invoice. I'll go to Tasks, Sales Invoicing, and choose my customer ID. It naturally fills in all of the information and it puts in a date for me. We could also put in the invoice number and all of those things that we're used to. But notice at the bottom, again as we're used to, because there's an open sales order, it takes me directly to the Apply to Sales Order tab. I can select our outstanding sales order. I can see that they have asked for 15, and I could attempt to ship 15. Again, I could make any kind of modifications I wanted here, but I do want you to notice on the left-hand side, because this is being applied to a sales order, I can't change the items that are part of it or their quantities that are remaining. I could modify the quantity that was shipped, but I can't ever modify the original amounts that are coming from the sales order. Let's just go ahead and leave this the way it is, that I went ahead and gave them the 15 deluxe facials that they ordered. And even though it's kind of strange, I do also have to tell them that I'm giving them the discount. Why? Because if I'm actually fulfilling the sales order in multiple steps, maybe I'm not going to give them that discount until the end after they paid me everything that they need to pay. You kind of get the idea. Now you'll also notice over on the right-hand side that we don't have any sales tax currently being calculated. That's because we did a quick add when we added Beecham Real Estate. In order to do that, we would need to go in and edit the underlying customer record and say that they are responsible for paying tax. But by default, Peachtree does not apply any particular tax rate. So that's something we certainly could go in and fix, and something that's worth looking at. Another option that we have is to have them pay the amount at the sale. I click on this little arrow, and if I do that, it opens a different screen. I can actually create a receive payment receipt right at this time. Deposit ticket IDs, a reference number, how much they paid, and who it's being applied to, as well as the method or a credit card is all possible. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit later, but I did want to show you that you can receive payments at the time you're also doing this. So I think that everything's in shape. Let's go ahead and do a save. And we can see what's happening is that Peachtree is giving us a little bit of information. It says this transaction will cause the customer's balance to go over the credit limit by $417.50. That was a default that we set, and this is our warning. It is, however, giving us the option. Do we want to continue? Well, because we're trying to win this new business, I'm going to say yes, that's absolutely okay. With that click, we've now created the invoice, and we have also gone through almost the entire sales process. We created a quote, we converted the quote into a sales order, we made adjustments to the sales order, and then we created an invoice showing what we were actually giving at the sale during that time. At this point, we've really done a good job of working through the process, and you can see how it all falls into place. You can actually join in at any time, at the quote, the sales order, or the invoicing point. But when it's all done, we can now take a deep breath and say we've gone ahead and delivered the product as well as invoiced for the sale.